Daniel Porter had stood in the Galactic Council chamber many times before. He had spent 20 years learning the languages and customs of alien species. He had shared meals with beings who breathed methane and negotiated treaties with creatures who communicated through color changes in their skin. But he had never felt so alone as he did now. The chamber was vast and circular, with seats rising in tiers around a central platform where he stood. Representatives from 14 species looked down at him. Some had faces he could read. Others had no faces at all. They sat in the highest tier, their tall gray forms wrapped in ceremonial robes. Their leader, High Arbiter, held a data tablet and spoke in a voice that echoed through the chamber. The species known as humanity stands accused of 3 violations of galactic law, said. His voice was cold and ancient. First, unauthorized expansion into the neutral territories. Second, harboring refugees from the Purge in direct violation of Council sanctions. Third, development of weapons that violate the Accords of Silence. Daniel took a breath and stepped forward. High Arbiter, if I may respond to these charges. Made a gesture that meant permission in culture. Daniel had learned these things because he believed understanding led to peace. Now he wondered if any of it mattered. The expansion into the neutral territories was to establish mining operations for resources Earth desperately needed, Daniel said. We filed the proper requests with the Council. They were ignored for 3 years. We had no choice but to act. A murmur passed through the chamber. Daniel continued. As for the refugees, they came to us fleeing genocide. The Council had declared them enemies of galactic peace, but they were civilians, families, children. We could not turn them away to die. They were designated threats, interrupted. Your species had no authority to grant them sanctuary. They were people, Daniel said, and we did what any decent civilization would do. The chamber fell silent. Daniel knew he was not winning any support, but he could not bring himself to apologize for saving lives. And the weapons, asked. How do you explain the orbital defense platforms armed with quantum? They were defensive only, Daniel said. We have enemies beyond Council space, pirates and raiders who prey on human colonies. We needed protection. Set down his tablet. The Council has heard your explanations. They change nothing. The vote will now proceed. Daniel watched as each species cast their decision. The voted for banishment. So did the Collective, the Helix Federation, and 8 other species. And 2 others abstained. Only the represented by voted against the punishment. The decision is final, announced. Humanity is banished from the Galactic Council. You have 90 standard cycles to withdraw from all Council space, surrender your jump gate access codes, and accept permanent quarantine within your home system. Any human vessel found outside the Sol system after this period will be destroyed without warning. Daniel felt the words like physical blows. 90 days to abandon everything they had built among the stars. 90 days to retreat to a single system and watch the universe move on without them. This is unjust, he said quietly. This is the law, replied. Your species should have considered the consequences before acting like animals. Daniel said nothing more. There was nothing left to say. The journey back to Earth took 12 days through the Jump Gate network. Daniel spent most of that time staring at the stars and wondering how he would deliver this news. When his shuttle finally descended through the clouds over New Geneva, he felt like he was bringing a death sentence to his own world. Admiral Lisa Harding met him at the landing pad. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded Earth's defense fleet for 15 years and had fought in 3 border conflicts. Daniel trusted her more than anyone else in the military. How bad? She asked. As bad as it gets, Daniel said. They walked together to the emergency cabinet meeting. The room was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists. They all looked to Daniel for answers he did not have. He told them everything: the charges, the vote, the sentence. When he finished, the room was silent. 90 days, said President. That is not enough time to evacuate our colonies. They know that, Admiral Harding said. They are hoping we will leave people behind. It will give them an excuse to take military action. Then we evacuate everyone, said General Philip Turner. Every human being in council space comes home. And then what? Asked Dr. Samuel Grant, the chief science advisor. We sit in our solar system and wait to die. Without access to the jump gates, we cannot trade, we cannot explore, we cannot grow. They are condemning us to a slow extinction. Daniel looked around the room. He saw fear in some faces, anger in others, but he also saw something else. He saw determination. They think we will collapse without them, Daniel said. They think we need the council to survive. Do we? President asked. Admiral Harding shook her head. We need resources, we need technology, we need time, but we do not need them. 90 days is not enough time, General Turner said. 90 days is not enough time to save everything, Admiral Harding agreed. But it is enough time to save what matters: our people, our knowledge, our will to survive. Daniel felt something shift in the room. The shock was fading. In its place came something harder and more dangerous: purpose. We bring everyone home, President said. Every colony, every outpost, every research station. We give the council exactly what they asked for, and then we figure out how to make them regret this decision. That could take decades, Dr. Grant said. Then it takes decades, Admiral Harding replied. We are a patient species when we need to be. Daniel thought about the council chamber. He thought about looking down at him like he was something small and insignificant. He thought about the word had used: animals. They made a mistake, Daniel said quietly. Everyone looked at him. They think banishment is a punishment, he continued. They think cutting us off from the galaxy will weaken us, but they have forgotten something important about humans. What is that? President asked. Daniel smiled for the first time since the verdict. We do not give up. We do not accept defeat. And when the universe tells us we cannot do something, we find a way to do it anyway. Admiral Harding nodded slowly. We have 90 days to figure out how to survive alone. No, Daniel said. We have 90 days to start building something new, something they have never seen before. We will not just survive this. We will come back stronger than they can imagine. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then President stood. Get me every scientist, every engineer, every military strategist we have, she said. We have work to do. Daniel looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the council was celebrating their victory over the troublesome humans. They had no idea what they had started. The first 3 years were the hardest humanity had ever faced. When the jump gates closed behind the last evacuation ship, Earth found itself alone in a way it had not been for 2 centuries. The trade networks that brought medicine, rare metals, and advanced technology simply stopped. Factories shut down. Hospitals ran out of supplies. People died from diseases that had been curable just months before. Watched the crisis unfold from her office in the Reconstruction Authority. She had been a logistics expert before the banishment, managing supply chains across 12 colony worlds. Now, she was responsible for keeping 8 billion people alive with only the resources of a single solar system. We are losing 3,000 people a day, her assistant reported, mostly from medication shortages. Closed her eyes for a moment. 3,000 people, families, children, dying because the council had decided humanity was not worthy of galactic civilization. Show me the resource inventory again, she said. The numbers appeared on her screen. They were not good, but they were not impossible. Earth had iron, aluminum, and water. The asteroid belt had platinum, titanium, and rare earth elements. Mars had ice and minerals. The pieces were there. They just needed to put them together differently. "We need to change everything," said. "Every factory, every farm, every research lab. We rebuild from the ground up." It took 2 years to stabilize the crisis. Implemented the reconstruction protocols, a complete reorganization of human civilization. Nothing was wasted. Every scrap of metal was recycled. Every person with useful skills was put to work. The old economy of credits and trade disappeared. In its place came a system of contribution and need. People complained at first. They missed the luxuries that council trade had provided. But as the death toll dropped and the factories started running again, the complaints faded. Humanity was learning to survive on its own. Dr. Moore worked in an underground laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains. He was a physicist who had spent his career studying the theoretical limits of faster-than-light travel. The council had always controlled the jump gates, and nobody had ever figured out how to build new ones. The technology was supposedly impossible to replicate. Did not believe in impossible. "Show me the precursor data again," he said to his team. The information came from an unlikely source. The refugees that Earth had sheltered possessed fragments of knowledge about an ancient race that had existed before the Council. These precursors had built things the modern galaxy could not explain. Their technology worked on principles that Council scientists had declared too dangerous to study. Studied those principles anyway. "This energy configuration," he said, pointing to a diagram. "The Council abandoned this approach because it was unstable, but look at what happens if we add a containment matrix here." His assistant, a young woman named Grace, leaned forward. She had started as a factory worker building ship components. Her designs had been so innovative that had recruited her to the research team. "The energy would fold space rather than punch through it," Grace said slowly, "like bending a piece of paper instead of tearing a hole." Smiled. "Exactly. No jump gates required. We generate our own passage through space." It took 5 more years to turn theory into reality. Grace designed the engine components while worked out the physics. They failed hundreds of times. Ships were destroyed. People died. But they kept working because they had no other choice. Commander Park led the Sol Defense Initiative during those years. He had been a junior officer when the banishment happened. Now he commanded everything humanity had left, which was not much. 27 patrol ships, he reported to the emergency cabinet. 12 armed freighters, 4 orbital stations. That is our entire fleet. "It is not enough," Admiral Harding said. She was older now, her hair completely white, but her mind was still sharp. "No," agreed, "but we are building more. The shipyards in the asteroid belt are producing 2 new vessels every month. By next year it will be 4. The year after that, 8. The ships they built were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Grace designed them with human needs in mind rather than Council specifications. They were faster, tougher, and more adaptable. Each one carried weapons that the Council had banned because they were too destructive. Humanity was not planning to start a war, but if war came to them, they would be ready. By year 10, the Sol system was transformed. Mars had a breathable atmosphere, created by atmospheric processors that team had developed from precursor principles. The asteroid belt was a network of shipyards and mining stations connected by shuttles that never stopped moving. Jupiter's moons housed research facilities where scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Stood on a balcony on Mars and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She remembered the early days when people were dying by thousands. Now Mars had 2 million residents and was growing every month. "We did it," she said to herself. "We actually did it." But survival was not enough. Moore had promised them something more. The test ship was called Pioneer. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle, but it carried an engine that could change everything. Stood in the control room with Grace at his side. Park watched from a viewing platform with Admiral Harding. "Begin the sequence," said. The Pioneer's engine activated. Space around the ship began to shimmer and fold. For a moment, the vessel seemed to stretch in impossible directions. Then it vanished in a flash of light. The control room was silent. Everyone held their breath. 30 seconds passed. Then a minute. Felt his heart pounding. If the calculations were wrong, the Pioneer could be anywhere. It could be destroyed. It could be lost forever. A signal appeared on the monitors. Read the coordinates 3 times before he believed them. "It worked," he whispered. The Pioneer had traveled 30 light years in less than a second. It had arrived exactly where they had aimed it. No jump gates, no council permission, just human engineering and determination. Admiral Harding walked down from the viewing platform. Her eyes were bright with tears. "How long until we can build more of these engines?" she asked. 6 months for the first production model, Grace said. A year to equip a full fleet. Park laughed out loud. It was the first time anyone had heard him laugh since the banishment. "They locked us in a cage," he said, "and we built wings." Looked at the star charts on the wall. Beyond Council space lay unexplored regions that no known species had claimed. Hundreds of star systems waiting to be discovered, resources waiting to be gathered, perhaps even allies waiting to be found. "The Council thought they were ending our story," said. "They were just starting a new chapter." In the quiet years of exile, humanity had not simply survived. They had evolved. They had built technology that exceeded anything the Council possessed. They had forged a unity of purpose that had never existed before. And now they were ready to show the galaxy what they had become. Captain Foster guided his ship through the uncharted darkness beyond Council space. The Horizon was one of the first vessels equipped with the new fold drive, and had volunteered to take it further than any human had ever gone before. His crew of 40 had been traveling for 6 months, mapping star systems and searching for resources. What they found instead was something far more valuable. "Captain, we are detecting structures on the 3rd planet," his sensor officer reported. "They appear to be artificial." Leaned forward in his command chair. Artificial structures meant one of 2 things. Either they had found ruins of a dead civilization, or they had found someone still alive. "Take us closer," he said, "but keep shields ready." The planet below was green and blue, covered in forests and oceans. The structures rose from a continent on the eastern hemisphere. They were elegant towers of white stone, connected by bridges that seemed too thin to support their own weight. As the Horizon descended through the atmosphere, saw figures emerging from the buildings to watch them. The beings were tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like pearl in the sunlight. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy by comparison. They did not run or hide. They simply watched and waited. Took a shuttle down to meet them alone. It was a risk, but he had learned that first contact required trust. As he stepped onto the soft grass, one of the beings approached him. It spoke in a language his translator could not recognize, but there was no hostility in its voice. "I am Foster," he said slowly. "I come from Earth. We mean you no harm." The being tilted its head and studied him. Then it reached out and touched his forehead with long, delicate fingers. Images flooded his mind. He saw this species building great cities across a dozen worlds. He saw them trading with the Council centuries ago. And he saw them being driven out, their colonies burned, their people scattered because they had refused to submit to Council authority. The said aloud, understanding flooding through him, "You are the..." The being nodded. It showed him more images. They had fled to this remote region of space and hidden for 300 years. They had watched the galaxy from a distance, waiting for something to change. "We were banished too," said. "The Council threw us out 30 years ago." The eyes widened. It touched his forehead again and felt a question form in his mind. Why had the humans come here? What did they want? "We want to build something new," said. "Something better than the Council, and we want friends to build it with us." The leader considered this for a long moment. Then it smiled and felt a warmth spread through his mind. They would listen. They would talk. Perhaps they would join them. Returned to his ship, with the first alien ambassador humanity had welcomed in 3 decades. Ambassador Maria Santos had spent 20 years preparing for this moment. She had studied every species the Council had wronged, every civilization they had abandoned or destroyed. Now she was meeting them one by one and offering them something the Council never had: respect. "The human coalition welcomes the sovereignty," she announced at the signing ceremony. "Together, we will build a future where all species are valued." The representative touched her forehead in their traditional gesture of friendship. Behind them, representatives from 3 other species watched with interest. The refugees had already joined the coalition. So had the exiles, a breakaway faction from the Council species that had voted for humanity's banishment. Now they brought their knowledge and their resources to the growing alliance. Maria looked at the star map on the wall. 43 human colonies now dotted the unexplored regions beyond Council space. Each one was connected to Earth by the Fold Drive network, and each one was growing stronger every day. "How many species have we contacted now?" she asked her aide. 12 that we know of," the aide replied. 7 have expressed interest in formal alliance. The others are still considering. Maria nodded. The Council had spent conquering and controlling. Humanity was trying something different. They were asking instead of demanding. They were offering partnership instead of submission. It was slower than conquest, but the bonds it created were stronger. On Earth, a different kind of building was taking place. The emergency cabinet had governed humanity through the crisis years, but the growing empire needed something more permanent. Representatives from every colony gathered in New Geneva for a constitutional convention that would determine humanity's future. Cole stood before the assembly and made his case. "Democracy served us well on one planet," he said. "But we now span 40 star systems. We face threats that require quick decisions and unified action. We need a government that can respond to crises without endless debate." The crowd murmured. Had been a soldier before the banishment, a captain who had led the last evacuation convoy from the colonies. He had seen what happened when decisions came too slowly. "I am not proposing tyranny," he continued. "I am proposing an empire with a strong leader, but also with protected rights and elected councils. The emperor will command the military and conduct diplomacy. The Senate will write laws and control resources. The courts will protect the people from both." The debate lasted for weeks. Many feared giving so much power to one person, but pointed to the threats they faced. The council could attack at any time. Unknown dangers lurked in unexplored space. They needed unity, and they needed it now. In the end, the convention voted to establish the human empire. Cole became emperor by popular acclaim, not inheritance. He took the title with a promise that it would never become a throne for tyrants. Admiral Lisa Harding watched the coronation ceremony from her flagship. She was very old now. Her body kept functioning by medical technology that had not existed before the banishment. But her mind was still sharp, and she had work to do. "How many ships do we have now?" she asked Grace, who had risen to the rank of admiral herself. 312 combat vessels," Grace replied. "Plus support ships, transports, and scouts. We could take on any council fleet and win." Lisa nodded slowly. They had spent 30 years building in secret, 30 years of growth and preparation while the council ignored them. Now they were ready to step back onto the galactic stage. "The council has detected our activity," Grace said. "Intelligence reports that High Arbiter received the information yesterday." Lisa smiled grimly. She remembered from the banishment hearing. She remembered the contempt in his voice when he called humanity animals. She wondered what he was thinking now. "Let them come," she said. "We are not the same species they threw away. We are something new, something stronger, and if they want to fight, we will give them one they will never forget. Somewhere in council space, sat in his private chambers and studied the reports. Human ships had been spotted in regions that should have been empty. Human colonies had appeared on worlds that no one had claimed. Somehow, without jump gates, without council technology, the banished species had spread across the stars. For the first time in his very long life, felt afraid. He had expected humanity to die quietly in their little solar system. Instead, they had built an empire. And now they were coming back. The Council reconnaissance fleet consisted of 15 warships, each one crewed by veterans who had never lost a battle. Admiral of the Collective led the expedition personally. His orders were simple: find the human settlements and assess their strength. If they proved weak, eliminate them. If they proved strong, report back for reinforcements. Did not expect any difficulties. Humans were primitives who had been thrown out of civilized space 30 years ago. Whatever they had built in exile would be crude and easily destroyed. The fleet emerged from the jump gate at the edge of unexplored territory. Sensors immediately detected activity. Ships were moving in patterns that suggested organization and purpose. Structures floated in orbit around a nearby planet. The humans had built something here. Move to intercept the nearest vessels, ordered. Show them council authority. His fleet advanced in formation. The human ships did not flee. They turned to face the council fleet and held position. Counted 12 vessels, smaller than his own, but arranged with obvious tactical skill. This is Admiral of the Galactic Council, he broadcast. Human vessels, you are in violation of your banishment terms. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The response came from a human woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Her uniform bore insignia that did not recognize. This is Admiral Grace of the Human Empire, she said. You are in Imperial territory. You will follow us to the border or you will be escorted by force. Those are your only options. Laughed, 12 ships threatening 15. These humans had not learned anything from their banishment. You cannot threaten a council fleet, he said. Surrender now or face destruction. One warning, Grace replied. That is all you get. Gave the order to attack. His weapons officers targeted the lead human vessel and fired. The shot never landed. Something happened to space between the two fleets. It twisted and folded, and the energy blast simply vanished into a pocket of distorted reality. Before could react, the human ships moved with speed that should have been impossible. They surrounded his fleet in seconds, their weapons locked on his vessels. Your shields will not stop our guns, Grace said calmly. Your engines cannot outrun our ships. You have exactly one chance to leave this space alive. Take it. Looked at his tactical display. His officers were pale with shock. The human technology was beyond anything the council possessed. If they fought, they would die. Stand down, whispered. All ships stand down. The human fleet escorted the council ships to the border without firing a shot. Grace watched them go with satisfaction. The message had been sent. Humanity was no longer weak. The council fell into chaos when delivered his report. Species that had always followed leadership now questioned everything. If humanity could build such technology in exile, what else had the council been wrong about? High Arbiter called for immediate military action. He demanded that all council forces unite to crush the human threat before it grew stronger. But the other species hesitated. War with humanity could cost millions of lives. Perhaps negotiation was a better path. Of the sent a secret message to Ambassador Maria Santos. They had voted against human banishment 30 years ago. They had always believed the punishment was unjust. High Arbiter will never agree to peace, wrote, but many of us would welcome a different arrangement. Can your emperor meet with us? Emperor Cole received the message in his throne room on Earth. He was 60 years old now, his hair gray but his mind still sharp. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. The question was how to handle it. "They want to talk," Maria Santos said. "That is progress." "We'll never negotiate in good faith," Admiral Grace warned. He would rather destroy humanity than admit he was wrong. Considered both opinions. He had learned patience during the years of exile. He had also learned that strength without wisdom led to disaster. "We will meet them," he decided, "but on our terms, neutral ground, public acknowledgement that our banishment was wrong and must be present." The negotiations were arranged at a station called Neutral Ground, built specifically for this purpose in the space between Council territory and the human empire. Representatives from both sides gathered in a great chamber designed to intimidate no one. Cole entered with a small delegation. Maria Santos walked beside him, along with Captain Foster and 2 Imperial guards. Across the chamber stood with his own advisors. The High Arbiter's ancient face showed nothing but contempt. "So the animals have learned to build ships," said as approached. "Impressive for such a primitive species." Did not react to the insult. He had expected nothing less. "We are here to discuss peace," he said calmly. "The human empire has no desire for war with the Council." "Peace?" laughed. "You speak of peace while you build fleets and recruit our enemies to your cause. The traitors. You are creating an alliance against us." "We are creating a home for those you rejected," replied. "Species that the Council abandoned or destroyed. They came to us because we offered what you never did. Respect." "Respect is earned," snapped. "Your species has done nothing to earn it." Stepped forward. "Perhaps we should focus on practical matters. Trade routes, territorial boundaries, diplomatic recognition." The discussion continued for hours. Offered reasonable terms. The Empire would claim the unexplored regions it had already settled. The Council would keep its existing territory. Trade could resume between both powers, benefiting everyone. Rejected every proposal. He demanded that humanity surrender its new technology, abandon its colonies, and accept supervision by Council observers. He wanted to put humanity back in the cage they had escaped. "You ask us to give up everything we built," said. "Everything we achieved through our own effort and sacrifice. Why would we agree to that?" "Because you have no choice," replied. "The Council will not accept a rival power. Either you submit or you will be destroyed." Felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "We did not ask to be rivals. We only asked to be treated as equals. You refused. You threw us out like garbage. And now that we have built something greater than you ever imagined, you want us to bow down again." "You are still animals," said coldly. "Dangerous animals that learn to mimic civilization, nothing more." The room fell silent, looked at for a long moment. Then he turned to his delegation. "We are done here," he said. "You cannot simply leave," protested. "The negotiations are not finished." "They are for us," replied. "You came here to humiliate us, not to make peace. We will not accept that." He walked toward the exit. Maria Santos and the others followed. His voice echoed behind them. "You will regret this. The Council will crush your pathetic empire." Paused at the door, he turned to face one last time. "We do not seek war," he said quietly. "But we will not accept insults. We will not accept submission. We will continue to grow, continue to build, and continue to welcome those you have abandoned. When you are ready to treat us as equals, we will talk again. Until then, stay out of our space." He left the chamber without looking back. The negotiations had failed, but felt no regret. Some things were more important than peace. Dignity was one of them. 2 weeks later, addressed the Imperial Senate on Earth. The chamber was filled with representatives from every human colony and every allied species. Exiles and 4 others sat among the human senators. "The Council refused peace," announced. "They demanded our submission instead. I refused." The chamber erupted in applause. When it quieted, continued. We will not start a war. We are not conquerors, but we will defend ourselves and our allies against any attack, and we will continue to offer sanctuary to any species that the Council has wronged. Our door remains open." He looked out at the diverse assembly before him, humans and aliens working together as equals. This was what he had dreamed of during the long years of exile. "They called us animals," said. "Let us show them what animals can build." High Arbiter spent 3 months assembling his coalition. They contributed 80 warships. The Helix Federation added 40 more. 2 other council species joined with their own forces. Together, they formed a fleet of 160 vessels, the largest military force the council had deployed in 2 centuries. Did not wait for the council to approve his plan. He knew that and others would object to military action. So he acted on his own authority, claiming that humanity posed an immediate threat to galactic security. The target was a human colony called Haven, located on the edge of Imperial space. It was a world of farms and factories, home to 300,000 civilians. Chose it specifically because it was poorly defended. He wanted an easy victory to demonstrate council power. The attack came without warning. His fleet emerged from jump space and opened fire on the orbital defense stations. The small garrison of human ships fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 20 to 1. Within an hour, they were destroyed. Then turned his weapons on the planet below. Admiral Grace was commanding a patrol group 50 light-years away when the distress signal arrived. She listened to the reports with growing horror. Energy beams striking civilian centers. Thousands dead in the first minutes. Children screaming as their schools burned. "All ships, maximum speed to Haven," she ordered. "Broadcast emergency calls to every Imperial vessel in range." Her fleet covered the distance in 3 jumps. When they arrived, ships were still firing on the planet. Grace counted the enemy forces and knew she was outnumbered. She had 12 ships against 160. It did not matter. "All weapons free," she said. "Target their command vessels first." The Imperial ships attacked with everything they had. Grace's flagship dove straight at the battleship carrying. Energy beams flashed between the vessels. Shields flickered and failed on both sides. Grace watched 3 of her ships explode. Good people dying to protect civilians they would never meet. She felt the fury rising in her chest and let it fuel her focus. "Transmit everything," she ordered. "Every image, every sensor reading. Make sure the whole galaxy sees what the Council has done." Her communications officer sent the data to every relay station in range. Soon the images of burning cities and dead children would reach every corner of civilized space. The Council would have to answer for this. More Imperial ships arrived as the battle continued. 20, then 40, then 60 vessels emerging from fold space to join the fight. The tide began to turn. Coalition forces started retreating toward the jump gate. "Do not let them escape," Grace said. "Not a single one." But Emperor Cole's voice cut through her orders. "Admiral, stand down your pursuit." Grace stared at the communication screen. "Your Majesty, they murdered 30,000 civilians. We cannot let them go unpunished." "We will not become what they are," replied. His voice was calm but firm. "Destroy the ships that remain in our space, let the others go, and save everyone on Haven that we can." Grace wanted to argue. She wanted to chase to the ends of the universe and make him pay. But she understood what was doing. Revenge would feel good, but it would not bring back the dead. It would only start a cycle of violence that might never end. "All ships cease pursuit," she ordered. "Focus on rescue operations." The surviving Council ships fled through the jump gate. Behind them, Imperial vessels descended to Haven to search for survivors. It took 3 days to pull everyone from the rubble. 18,000 people had died, but 280,000 had survived because the Imperial fleet arrived in time. The images of the massacre spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had supported the Council watched in horror as warships fired on children. Addressed the council chamber with tears in her eyes. "This is what we have become," she said. "This is what we allowed to happen. I cannot be part of this anymore." The formally from the Galactic Council. They requested immediate alliance with the human empire. Within a week, 3 other species followed. The council was crumbling from within. On Earth, Dr. Moore prepared to share his greatest discovery. He had spent 30 years studying precursor technology, and he had finally understood its true purpose. The precursors did not leave their technology behind by accident, he told the Imperial Science Council. They left it as a test. They wanted to see which species would be brave enough to use it. He showed them the evidence. Precursor ruins on 100 worlds, each containing fragments of the same message. The ancient race had achieved things beyond imagination, but they had also understood that power without wisdom led to destruction. So they left their knowledge scattered across the galaxy, waiting for species who would use it responsibly. The Council species found this technology long ago, explained. But they were afraid of it. They banned it rather than learning to use it safely. They failed the test. "And us?" Emperor asked. Smiled. "We passed. We took the dangerous path because we had no other choice. And we used what we learned not for conquest but for survival, for growth, for building something new." Nodded slowly. It made sense. Humanity had not been banished because they were inferior. They had been banished because they were different, because they were willing to take risks that the Council species would not. The final confrontation came 3 months later. Emperor led the Imperial fleet to Prime, the station where he had been condemned 30 years before. But he did not come to conquer. He came to offer a choice. Ambassador Maria Santos addressed the assembled species. "The old council is finished," she said. "You can continue to fight us, but you will lose. Not because we are stronger, but because your own people no longer believe in what you stand for." She gestured to the representatives from the and the others who had joined the empire. "These species were once your members. They left because you offered them nothing but fear and control. We offered them respect and partnership." Maria looked at, who sat alone in the section. His allies had abandoned him after the massacre at Haven. His own people had stripped him of his authority. "We are not here for revenge," Maria continued. "We are here to build something better, a galactic union where every species has a voice, where disputes are settled through discussion, not force, where no one is banished simply for being different." She extended her hands to the assembly. "Join us, not as subjects but as equals. Help us create the future that the precursors hoped for, a galaxy united in cooperation and mutual respect." The vote took less than an hour. 11 species agreed to join the new Galactic Union. Only the refused, retreating to there in isolation, left the chamber without speaking a word. 1 year later, the first assembly of the Galactic Union met on Earth. Representatives from 23 species gathered in a great hall built for this purpose. Human, and dozens of others sat together as equals. Ambassador Maria Santos gave the opening address. 31 years ago, humanity was thrown out of galactic civilization. We were told we were primitive, dangerous, unworthy of a place among the stars. We could have given up. We could have died quietly in our solar system. Instead, we built. She looked around the chamber at the faces of so many species. "We built ships that could cross the galaxy without jump gates. We built colonies on worlds no one else wanted. We built alliances with species the Council had forgotten. And now we have built this. A union that welcomes everyone. A community that rejects no one." In the gallery above, Daniel Porter watched with tears in his eyes. He was very old now, kept alive by technology that had not existed when he stood before the Council and heard their verdict. He remembered the shame and the fear of that day. He remembered wondering if humanity would survive. Now he watched humans and aliens working together as partners. He saw the beginning of something greater than the Council had ever been. Maria Santos concluded her speech with words that would be remembered for generations. They thought they were ending our story when they banished us. They thought they were closing a door forever. But humans do not accept closed doors. We find other ways through. We build our own paths. We create our own destiny. She smiled at the assembly. Welcome to the Galactic Union. Welcome to the future we built together. The chamber erupted in applause that seemed to shake the walls. Daniel Porter closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him. 31 years of struggle and sacrifice had led to this moment. Humanity had been banished from the stars. Now they had returned to lead them.